Matt's Lane. We're going to do Steely Dan, Can't Buy a Thrill next. So, Matt, before you steam into your hot take right here, which I'm very excited to listen to, tell us a little bit about the numbers for Steely Dan.
Steely Dan, so the Can't Buy a Thrill, their debut album, if I'm not mistaken, comes in at number 168 in Rolling Stone's Top 500 list, another highly ranked album for them. In the 1970s on Best Ever Albums, it's 133. And 1972, the year that it was released, is number 14. And overall, it's 571. All right, so I have historically, and I don't even know if I can say historically, I have to say this is probably something I've had an opinion on for the past 10 years or so, but just not liking Steely Dan. And I've always known, I didn't know anything about this album. Like that when we said Can't Buy a Thrill, I'm like, I've never heard of it. Asia is the one that always kind of comes up as being their crowning achievement. That's the highest ranked album on Best Ever Albums. This one's just behind it. And I've heard a lot of people that I know, a couple of good buddies of mine love Steely Dan. I've listened to them before, and I'm like, I don't get it. This is like this yacht rock kind of stuff that I've never really been into. And so I kind of just took this position of like, I hate this band. Like, this is an overrated band that I hate. And I listened to the record this week, and I can't believe how much I liked it. So I'm starting to question whether my opinion before was well informed. But it's going to be interesting when we cover Asia, because I know we are doing that in the regular episode. And that's the one that I've usually gone to, like, I don't really understand this. But so first of all, there's 3 hits on here that I didn't know were Steely Dan songs, to be honest. These are songs.
You didn't know these songs were Steely Dan? This is like peak Steely Dan.
Yeah, these are like their most famous songs, I think. Probably.
Yes. They totally are. And I've known all these songs. It's very interesting for me because with each one of them, so we're talking about Do It Again, Dirty Work, and Reelin' in the Years.
Yeah.
I mean, these are songs, even if you don't know the titles, like you just play a bar from them, and it's like, oh, this is a song that's been on the radio all the time. Mm-hmm. I remember hearing these songs. These songs have just been in the ether since as far back as I can remember, really. Right. But the interesting thing is, up until this past week, those songs have always just been in the background. I don't ever remember going, I hate these songs, right?
Yeah.
I've always been indifferent to them. They've always just kind of been there. I've never really paid a whole lot of attention, hence not even really knowing that Steely Dan is the artist behind them, which was, so in a way, I was like, this album was very interesting because it was just like an Easter egg dropped here and there throughout it.
Right.
And when I really listened to it, I was like, this is a lot better than what I remembered. Like, I found that I liked it's a very upbeat album. It's very catchy. Yeah. It's very bouncy. I think in some songs that I didn't know, like Midnight Cruiser, the 4th track on here, has a great chorus. Like, it's a very melodic, very catchy album. Now, the production is very much in that 70s yacht rock kind of lane, which is a sound that, years ago I would have said I hate that. Like, it's just this, I always feel like it's kind of like this weak, or I always felt like it was this weak sounding kind of soft, like schlocky kind of sound with talk about no edge, right? I can't really think that anybody would say that this has edge. But I think the more that I'm listening, I think part of it is this podcast is going, listening to records that, like Dusty Springfield comes up. That's kind of in that realm as well, kind of like the production, the strings, the 70s, 60s production, which this has. I've always kind of been turned off, but like actually forcing myself to sit down and listen to it, I'm getting a little bit more of what they're doing here, and I really like this. So I was very surprised. I don't think there was any. I think maybe. I think the last track might have been the one that I liked the least. Turn That Heartbeat Over Again. That was kind of one that I felt a little bit didn't really have a hook in it that I liked it. Fire in the Hole, a little bit like that as well. But they have like some country in here, like that song Brooklyn, Owes the Chamber Under Me. Mm-hmm. That's like a country. They got like slide guitar stuff going on there, and I really like that. Country's something that I've been liking more as the years have gone on. So very surprised here. I'm eating crow. I we'll see what happens with Asia. I still might reserve the right to shit on that album, but I was surprised with this. This is a very catchy, upbeat, good summer album too. I was listening to this on a warm day, and I was surprised. Very crisp production, interesting guitar parts, very good solos on here as well, like some really good guitar solos. It sounded like a little Allman Brothers-esque, I would say as well. Surprised. It's amazing what happens when you actually listen to something. So
it does seem like your type of album. I think the vibe is very much like jam bandy in a way. I feel like I liked it. Steely Dan is one of those bands that I never paid attention to at all, but I feel like I know on the internet circles and like Twitter that I follow, a lot of people are big Steely Dan fans, but they never came up in my life at all, and I never sought them out. So when I heard this album for the first time, this is the first time I've heard this album, I knew the hits, like we said, but I kind of liked it too. I liked the vibe of it. That was kind of my total takeaway of this album, is they're kind of laid back, but they're doing interesting things in their songs. They've got some great choruses and hooks, I found, and I like their integration of horns into the album. And I think they have like woman backup singers, which I like too, on one of the songs on Kings. That's the third track. And I think they had like some organ too, which I normally don't like, but I liked it when they used it in here.
A lot of different types of keys, I think, that they're using on this. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's got this very summery thing. I'm not sure if they are yacht rock. They might be proto yacht rock, because I think this is a little early, but I think the hallmarks are there of that type of feel and instrumentation. And I think they have a couple different singers too. They harmonize pretty well at times. And yeah, this was enjoyable. Do we know if this is their debut album or where the balls? Okay,
I did see that. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I'd say it's a strong debut.
It's their second highest rated album on Best Ever Albums, behind Asia. So.
Okay. John, what did you think of Steely Dan?
I'm baffled you guys don't know this album. This album is like, I don't even know what to compare. Like, what else? Boston maybe, or Aerosmith Rocks, or any of those albums that sold freaking 30 million copies in the 70s that embody like the 70s sound that get played on classic rock a jillion times. And not even to be dismissive or haughty, but like I'm actually shocked that you guys didn't know those songs were Steely. I'm like, if you were telling me to list off Steely Dan
I knew they
songs,
were Steely Dan songs.
Like, okay, yeah,
I knew the hits.
It was me. It was me.
Okay, it just I first of so I know, while Steely Dan isn't one of my favorite bands at all, they've always fallen in guilty pleasure for me. Always, all versions of 70s Steely Dan. It's important to note that this Steely Dan album and later Steely Dan albums have some clear differences in terms of the musicality and maybe even the popness. And some of that is because Palmer is the singer. David Palmer, I think, I want to say, is
for Steely Dan?
He's the singer only for this album, and that's one thing you have to know.
I thought it was Donald Fagen.
No. Fagen and Becker, I think, right?
Yeah,
Fagen
Walter
and
Becker.
They're the songwriters, which I'm going to get to later, but they are not the singers on this album.
They don't sing at all. See, I don't even know that.
They do a little bit, but David Palmer is the main singer on this album.
Okay, I never heard of that guy.
And so, like, you have to know that going in, because what he sounds like makes them more of a pop band. And so if you like the hits on this album, songs are going to sound different from Steely Dan in the future, because the vocal content is going to sound different. So right off the bat, I said, this is the David Palmer album.
That guy quit or got kicked out or
if
died?
If I remember correctly, he quit after the tour. I don't know.
Okay.
I know that like the audiences hated them when they toured, which is really funny, since basically Steely Dan is AOR like personified in many ways, and they played on classic rock to this day. I mean, I could turn on basically terrestrial radio and hear Dirty Work at some time or another. It just, I feel like, or Reelin' in the Years, right? These are songs that you hear all the time.
Yes.
But they're both memeable and standalone in their one thing I'll give Steely Dan credit for is you can hear their songs on this album in particular like 1,000 times, and they both make you like laugh and go, oh boy, what a 70s AOR song this is, but also still they're good enough songs that you also have to appreciate them on their own. And that's because the songwriters, Becker and Fagen, I know they wrote songs for other artists, and I'm pretty sure they wrote a song for like Barbra Streisand, if I remember. They were pretty accomplished songwriters, and they might I'm doing like a bio off the top of my head just from having watched documentaries. Like, I'm pretty sure they either worked at the Brill Building or wanted to work at the Brill Building. And you can hear it because they write these very, very clever lyrics. One thing about Steely Dan's lyrics is they always make me laugh because they got that AOR, but there's more to it than a lot of other AOR bands in terms of both their musical talent as well as their compositions are just advanced enough to not be schlocky, I'd say. Yeah. I think that they've unfairly gotten lumped in with a lot of bands that are much less talented than them because the sound of Steely Dan got appropriated by a lot of bands in the and I don't know how many of them we're going to cover here because they're not critical darlings. They might show up on the Rolling Stone countdown since there are some albums that people enjoyed listening to that may not have been critical darlings in the 70s. But the sound of what Steely Dan was doing here was copied by... You guys keep saying yacht rock, but I would say it's more what I call AOR, which is stuff designed to be played on the radio and in stadiums and to be sung along with by 20,000 people. I just don't think Steely Dan realized that was what was going to happen to them, which makes this different and also makes how they composed it a little bit different. But I really enjoy this album. There aren't many bad songs on this album. I like that they do a lot of different things and they're somehow accessible, but they also very much have you could tell a jazz background.
Oh yes, and very much so.
There's bossa nova on this. The first, I mean,
Santana.
I was gonna say, and that's what I was gonna say. Like the opening track is almost as good a Santana's track as the Santana track in many ways, and so they're in. But that's not what I'm talking about. I mean, Wasted Years is not the song I'm talking about for. Excuse me, Do It Again. I'm sorry, it's not the song I'm talking about for Bossa Nova. That's a different song.
Right.
But there's Blue Eyed Soul here. There's soaring vocals. There's stuff that like the Eagles and stuff were doing around the same time.
Yeah, it
there's
does remind me
jazz fusion. So there's a little bit of an overlap with Jethro Tull, who I think for a lot of people blends together with Steely Dan. I don't know if it's because their names kind of are unique, but they're kind of they're like a grab bag of 70s music. Especially this album sounds like it could have been made in 1975 as opposed to 1972 is what I thought of when I heard this, because even I was like, ooh, this was 72, huh? I thought this was 74, and I know Asia's like later 70s, so I'll be honest, I thought that their debut album would have been something like 74, 75 with their sound, but
Asia's 77.
Yeah, so, and it's a very different sounding album, as you'll find out when we listen to it. But yeah, I would say that this is a very strong recommend for me. I like this album quite a bit and always have liked this album quite a bit. And I think it gets a bad rap for sure.
Well, I would say, so two things. Yeah, it is weird that like I've heard these songs over and over again and I've never like consciously made the connection that this is Steely Dan. I'm sure that I heard that at some point, like hearing a song or reading something on like the radio comes up and somebody mentions, oh, that was Steely Dan, Reeling in the Years or whatever, but it just never, it was always kind of just in the background and never like connected with me. So I don't know what else to say about that. I mean, maybe I could have, if you would have said, okay, here's the song, here's 4 artists, pick the one, maybe I could have gotten that, you know, but the other thing I wanted to ask you, John, what about this is a guilty pleasure for you? What makes you say that?
It's kind of like Cotton Candy a little bit, and it's got that 70s production that's gleaming that I know turns off a certain type of music fan. It has never turned me off because I just in general, that 70s pristine, maybe some would say too pristine production that comes here with the layering. I know for some people sounds artificial, but I have always enjoyed the fact that it has that gleam to it. You know, there's just something about it. It's I think and also that the fact that the songs in many people think are overplayed, and there's just something for it seems like you can only like Steely Dan ironically nowadays. Even people that say they like them almost say that it ironically, which kind of is interesting to me because
I have two very good friends that sing their praises up and down, like, and say how great they are, intricate and, musically, like it's just, it's not ironic. They love them. Like it will die on that hill. I guess, is it just not it's not a band that's like a cool band or a band that,
it's kind of similar to like Jethro Tull, you know what I mean? That if you like, not like they have some of the same elements of jazz and prog rocky, and they're not the coolest band. They certainly weren't Sex, Drugs, and Rock and Roll or on the Catching a Rainbow into the future, or Young, and even just if you look at the guys in the band, they're professional musicians. Yeah.
Fagan and Becker are pretty like accomplished session players, right, too, or musicians in general. So I think that's why they are.
Only know that they are really accomplished songwriters. I don't 100% know. I'm sure with how they play their instruments. Yes, well, it'd be shocking to me if they weren't like a session player.
I would also have to say I don't hear Jethro Tull in this at all. Like that's
no. I'm saying in terms of being uncool.
Oh.
You know what I'm saying? Like, that's like, you kind of say that you like Jethro Tull.
Would Jethro Tull have been cool if they didn't have the flute? Is that what it was? Or was it the medieval?
It certainly didn't help their coolness,
Yeah. I think when you're talking about the musicality, too, or the complexity, it does lean towards that side of the spectrum of those prog rock musicians that we've talked about in terms of, like, complexity or importance.
Let's be honest. If you're driving in a car, right, and you're trying to impress people, like if you put, Steely Dan on, right, it's not gonna blow you away and say Led Zeppelin or even Pink Floyd. You get you're kind of
you're not gonna get the devil horns,
mysterious, or Sabbath. It's kind of like there's something going on with it. Or Zeppelin, it's kind of like mainstream, and even other bands during that era. When all I could think of is like in a time. Just even hearing yourself like playing that, there's nothing cool about it, but that doesn't mean that when you're by yourself, you wouldn't sing it, right? And so that's what I was saying about Steely Dan. Like, you wouldn't necessarily sing it in front of other people because you'd be like, "Oh, am I allowed?" But then when you're in the car by yourself, you would very easily sing, like I'm a fool to do your dirty work. Oh no, it's like just think about driving in a car and like putting that on.
It's like that scene in Tommy Boy where they're like, I could, you can change
yes,
if you want. I don't
exactly. Yes,
I can take it if you can. Suits you, okay?
Well, and once again, what does that 70s mainstream rock / pop have? It's that really polished production, and it's different than the polished production of the 80s, right? The 80s polished production is like the Phil Collins production or the Michael Jackson production. It's got or even like the one-hit wonders with the synths and stuff.
But those are much more synthetic. It seems like much more synthetic in the 80s than the 70s, I would say.
Whereas in the 70s, it's about going in and having like a certain sound that sounds like nothing is. I mean, and let's be honest, that's kind of where punk came from, right? Was the idea of it's too clean, I want.
Well, it's a jazzier sound. Like the guitar sound in here is kind of like a jazz guitar, like
but it's really neat jazz.
Well, yes, right, yeah. It's not the Miles Davis Bitches Brew jazz guitar, but this is like if you go to brunch, like like a jazz brunch or something, and the guitar guy's playing, that's the tone. It's like this crisp, zero edge, zero distortion, just very clean guitar sound, and I would say it's a jazzier sound in that regard too.
Yeah, it's pop rock, It's good pop rock though.
Yeah, I feel like this is a band that Eric Calderon liked too. I may be wrong about that.
Oh, really?
He seemed like
our old roommate.
Big into the 70s pop sound.
That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
Well, when you do the webpage of shared stories from Matt and Josh, you could put up a story, and perhaps
there's plenty more where that came from. But no, we'll get more with Steely Dan when we do, because we'll be covering Asia, so we'll do more of a bio on that at that time.
And we're going to get to a lot of bands, like the Eagles that have that polished sound, and Boston, and we won't probably cover Air Supply and bands like that, but they have it. And then there's other bands that go into other genres that have the same polished sound. Like I always think of like 38 Special, right? Is a band that like does Leonard Skinner, but like if you did it as AOR, right? Did songs. Right. And so there's a lot of those bands that are coming up that have that really clean production to them.
Mm-hmm. All of the Steely Dan albums on AllMusic are like 5 stars by the users and the critics. That's hilarious.
I
Well,
think
they're a
they
band
have
with
like
a cool
big
following. Yeah.
I think that they have a big following. Yeah.
And they have like 3 albums in between this one and 4 albums between this and Asia.
Okay.
So they must have. I wonder what the
Yeah, we'll
if
see.
their sound
We'll see how it
evolves, like
goes.
John said.
Yeah, I was
They
surprised
did,
at how much I like this.
Wasn't one called like Pretzel something? I remember my
Pretzel
dad
Logic.
having that. Pretzel Logic. There,
Yeah,
I remember
does
my
your
dad
dad
having
like
that
Steely
one.
Dan?
He does. It's not like a favorite band, but I can
Right.
remember it, I remember they have terrible album covers. This one's an awful album cover.
Yeah, they don't look very good.
I don't have it in front of me, but I just know there's a big set of like pink lips on it, and it looks like something that looks like a
Yeah.
I can never tell if it's like a market or like a high school set of lockers. It's just an awful album
Or like
cover.
a street, I think, like a street.
It's one of the worst album covers ever. I know that, and I remember seeing it in my dad's collection. I also remember the Pretzel Logic. You said they, God, the other. Oh, now I'm being put on the spot. There's another album that's like somebody's name.
Gaucho?
Lied.
Katie Lied. There you
Yeah,
go.
That's the one
right.
after
Yep.
Pretzel.
Oh, Katie lied.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
so-
not good either.
Is that a grasshopper?
No, they're all terrible album covers. That's one of the things I first remembered as a kid, like 11, when I first started looking at my dad's albums, right? And you're like, ooh, which ones do I want to listen to? Frampton Comes Alive looks interesting. Let me, listen to that one. Oh, Dark Side of the Moon, that looks interesting. But Steely Dan Can't Buy a Thrill was low on that list. Or
That might
I
be
think
their
it might have
worst
even
one.
gotten, I think I might have even like wanted to listen to it, but in the way that it's like, ooh, this could be a. And so, like, even 11 or 12-year-old me knew that wasn't a cool album cover. So there you go, right?
I think that might be their worst one. If I'm looking at all these.
Can't Buy a Thrill.
Yeah, that might be the worst.
Yeah, you can post.
Cover.
You can post it on Twitter. So yeah. But yeah, I think we've covered that. But once again, it sounds like it's 3 recommends, which I think shocked Matt.
It did. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
To his core.
I was wrong on this album. But
Boy, are we going to see a second? Are we going to see 2 mea culpas later?
We might.
Only time will tell. Well, we don't have to have a mea culpa here because we're about to Aretha Franklin